Good evening, this is Quintus Curtius, and the subject of this podcast is going to be anger. It's going to be anger, how to manage, how to control, and how to discipline your anger. But before we can even talk about that, before we can even get to that, we have to first talk a little bit about what is anger and where does it come from. Because if we can identify those things, then we can better handle how to control this anger and how to channel it in productive and not unproductive ways. A couple days ago, somebody on Twitter asked me, "Hey Quintus, can you talk a little bit more about anger?" I had put out a tweet that said, for those of you guys that are angry, you need to try to find, for those of you who are naturally angry, and there are some people that just naturally have anger issues, and that's fine to some extent. To some extent, that's fine. That's just personality driven in many ways. But I said, what you've got to do is try to find a way to channel that anger into productive ways, into productive outcomes. And somebody came back to me and said, "Hey, can you talk a little bit more about anger?" So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing this podcast. This podcast is basically a response to a request. And I think it's a very valid request because, let's face it, a lot of us out there have anger issues. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having anger issues. In fact, anger is good in many ways. In many ways, it's very, very good as long as you know it and you know how to manage it and you know how to channel it. But unproductive anger, let's talk about that. Let's talk first about the origin of anger. I'm going to break down the origins of anger. I started to think about this a little bit, and I jotted down a few things that I thought are some of the common sources of anger. But I always kept coming back to one big thing to start off the list. And that was a lack of respect for yourself, a failure to hold yourself accountable. That's, I think, for a lot of guys today, a lot of young guys, the biggest source of anger, I'll say it again, is a lack of self-respect and a failure to hold yourself accountable. You're not measuring up, you're not doing what you need to be doing, and you're taking it out on everybody else. Or you have some sort of hidden inner resentment against others, some sort of grudge against the world, and you want to let the world know. And what you don't know is, what you don't understand is, that's your little bitch ass reflecting its own inner insecurities out in the world. That's you. You're the source of the anger. It's you. Because you have to hold yourself accountable in life if you want to get anywhere. Being a man is not meant to be easy. It was never meant to be easy. There are certain standards. There are certain milestones. There are certain pathways that have to be followed at certain times. You can't just go through life a slime bag and a shit bag and not being responsible for anything. And that's one of the biggest problems I see out there today is everybody thinks they can just do whatever they want. You can't. You cannot. All right? Human beings have been around for tens of thousands of years, and 1,000 generations of men before us have had to go through these things and have had to adapt to the situations and have had to survive, and we have to do it too. So we have to hold ourselves accountable. And that holding yourself accountable starts with self-respect. And self-respect is very simple. You need to be on the right track, you need to be getting in shape or already in shape, you need to be staying in shape, you need to be studying, you need to be working, you need to be handling yourself. You need to be handling your business. Not being a fucking slime bag, retreating back into your same old sorry-ass excuses, your vices, your little addictions, all these little things that you have going on that you think are so cool. You're not cool. You got a lot of fucking problems. You need to start fixing them. Problem is you. You're the problem. That's the number one source of anger is your lack of respect. You don't respect anybody else and you don't respect yourself. Those two things are linked. Those two things are linked. If you don't respect yourself, you're going to reflect that hate and that anger on everybody else out there. Everybody else out there. It perpetuates itself. And you know what you need to do. You don't need any more classes or lists or motivational videos. You know what you need to do. But you won't do it. You're refusing to hold yourself accountable. So that's the number one That's the number one source, I think, of a lot of anger out there is deep down, you know you're not measuring up. Guys know when they're not measuring up and they hate it. They hate themselves. They're angry. They're pissed off. They're pissed off because they know they don't have the discipline to measure up. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to get up in the morning. They don't want to stay out late at night or stay up late at night studying. They don't want to do the work. That's the problem. So in many ways, we can say that anger is a vice. People retreat into it to save themselves, to save their little bitch-ass self-esteem that's not worth anything. Okay? Anger is the result of when you choose not to be responsible, when you choose to be a slime bag, when you choose to be a shit bag, that's when you get angry. That's the number one source of anger right there. Right there. And you need to hear it. So, that's the number one thing. There are some other sources of anger that I'm going to talk about a little bit, but many of them stem from that first one. Some of them don't, though. The next source of anger, I think, is not accepting situations, not accepting the reality of situations. Let me tell you something. The world is going to throw you a lot of crazy shit, okay? You're not entitled to happiness like it's some birthright. The world is going to throw you curveballs every day. Every hour of the day, you're going to be tested. You're going to be tested every single day, day in and day out. That's the way it goes. And sometimes those situations are going to go your way, and sometimes they will not. They will not. And it's your job to maintain your discipline, to maintain your positive state of mind, and handle your business. Handle your shit. Handle your business. Have some discipline. Have some self-respect. All right, number 2, not taking action. Again, this ties back to what I said in the beginning about not having respect for yourself. You don't have respect for yourself. You're not taking action on the things you need to do. Anger is the result. Now, there are 3 other things that I thought were emotional factors that are a little bit different. That doesn't mean they're excusable. Doesn't mean you get a pass. But I can say that they're different. I think if someone has been hurt and they have a desire for revenge, okay, revenge or loss, they're conscious of some sort of loss, maybe loss of time, loss of love, loss of affection. These things can generate anger. And lastly, guilt. Guilt, which I think also ties in a little bit to some of the things we already talked about. But revenge and loss, these are emotions. But you have to let the revenge go. If somebody hurt you at some time in your life in the past, tough shit. Tough shit. We've all been hurt. We've all been through it. But you have to still remain a human being with dignity and with forward momentum going forward. You can't become a fucking burnout, a loser, a whiner. And loss. Same thing with loss. Loss of love, loss of affection, loss of a family member maybe. Hey, that's the way it is. Nobody wishes they were enduring some incredible pain and suffering. Some people endure more than others. Some people have to go through harder things than others. That's the way it is in life. That's the way it is. So we have to not only hold ourselves accountable, we have to develop the skill of accepting situations that we cannot control. Okay? If we talk about those other factors, revenge, loss, guilt, it's basically our inability to accept the fact that there are some things that are beyond our control. Some things we have no control over. Some things we cannot manage. We have to sit back and just accept it. We have to deal with it. We have to find ways of dealing with it. So that's it. And it can only come from within you. There is no formula for managing anger that comes from some source of rays of light from the sun or from whatever. Okay, it's got to come from within you. You have to do it. You have to do it. That inner spirit that you have. And either you're going to have it or you're not. And when hard times test you, that's when you'll find out if you have it or not. When you are at rock bottom, when you've lost your money, when you've lost your job, when maybe you've lost your freedom, when you've hit rock bottom? You know, are you going to lose your discipline? Are you going to revert to your inner little bitch? Or are you going to put your head down and grind your way through it? That's the big question. That's the big question. It's got to come from within you. You've got to develop that inner light. I think of it almost like a radioactive isotope. You know, those certain types of elements and isotopes are radioactive. They emit particles, or they emit radiation on their own. They're sources of energy, they're emitters of things on their own. And they'll just emit particles, some of them for thousands and thousands of years. That almost has to be the analogy you have to look at. It's got to come from within you. You have to be a self-emitter of positivity. Because negativity and anger, it is addictive. It is addictive. It becomes the default position that your brain reverts to if you wallow in it for too long. And then you'll never get anywhere. But positivity is also addictive. It's also addictive. It's also addictive. If you start taking action, if you start developing some forward momentum, if you start developing some movement, it will build on itself. I guarantee you it will build on itself. All right? That's how you have to look at it. That's how you have to look at it. You've got to start taking action. And it's up to you. You've got two choices. You can be a whiny little bitch and be angry at everybody and spew hate at everybody else, and have your little, I'm going to write an article about, I just, women are awful and evil, and this group is evil and bad. No, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit. Nothing is more pathetic than seeing some guy whine and cry about how somebody was, mean to it. This group is mean to me and that group's mean to me. Take care of your fucking shit. Take care of yourself. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing, what somebody else did to you, about the things you can't control about. Take care of your shit. Take care of yourself. All right. That's about all I want to say about that. A little bit heated tonight, but sometimes that's just how it goes. Deal with it. Deal with it. I'm Quintus Curtius. Good night.